Welcome back to Hardball. Former White House strategist Steve Bannon is at the center of a growing showdown now over whether the White House can effectively gag witnesses in the Russian investigation. During his 11-hour appearance before the House Intelligence Committee yesterday, Bannon said that the White House instructed him not to answer questions about his time in the White House or in the transition. In an effort to compel his testimony, the committee subpoenaed Bannon on the spot yesterday. However, NBC News reports now that after the subpoena was issued, Bannon attorney William Burke conferred with the White House officials who continued to insist that Bannon should still not answer the committee's questions. Despite following those orders for the most part, Axios is today reporting that Bannon made one conspicuous slip-up. Quote, Bannon admitted that he'd had conversations with Reince Priebus, Sean Spicer, and legal spokesman Mark Corallo about Don Jr.'s, that's Donald Trump Jr.'s infamous meeting with the Russians in Trump Tower in June 2016. So they were all talking about that meeting at the White House. Meanwhile, after the special counsel also served Bannon with a grand jury subpoena last week, a source close to Bannon's lawyers tell NBC News now that Bannon will now be questioned by Robert Mueller's team instead of testifying before a grand jury. Let's get to what all that means. I'm joined now by Democratic Congressman Denny Heck, who sits on the House Intelligence Committee. Julia Ainsley is an investigative reporter with NBC News, and Joyce Vance is a former federal prosecutor. Talk about this, Congressman. What about this slip-up where yesterday in his testimony before your committee, Steve Bannon admitted that they'd talked in the White House about that infamous meeting at Trump Tower involving Donald Jr. and Jared and Manafort and the Russians?
Well, after 11 hours, anybody's bound to slip up and let the truth out a little bit, Chris. But, you know, the question here that is prompted is, what are they trying to hide? We shouldn't be surprised. This is an administration that is the first in American history, at least modern history, not to disclose the president's tax returns. And now, evidently, he is instructing witnesses before the Intelligence Committee to withhold information. What are they afraid of? What are they trying to hide, Chris?
Well, let me get back to what you must think, because that surmise, I think appropriately, is what Bannon himself said in the book, Michael Wolff's book. They're worried, appropriately, about money laundering involving Jared and Donald Jr. and a whole bunch of them, because somehow they might be involved with having a criminal enterprise on the way to the White House, some way to make money as they run for president. I assume that's what Steve Bannon says they ought to be worried about, because that's what he said.
Well, I'm not going to get into the specifics of what he said by committee policy, but I will say this. Whether or not he gets away with stiff-arming the Intelligence Committee, he's not going to get away with stiff-arming Bob Mueller. Chris, I don't know that you know this, but you know what Bob Mueller's nickname was when he arrived at the Department of Justice? It was Bobby Three Sticks. Robert Mueller III, Robert Mueller the hockey player, and Robert Mueller the Boy Scout. He is straight as they can be, eats his lunch at his desk every day. He is a decorated Marine veteran who I think won the Purple Heart. This guy is laser focused in on getting at the truth, and Steve Bannon nor the White House is going to stand in his way.
Well, Bannon